Novus, the new voice. Vox Novus, the new dimension. Vox Novus, thought and movement leaders who will share from their experience and offer tools to help us navigate our rapidly changing world. My name is Victor Furman. Welcome to Vox Novus, the new voice. We know that yoga practitioners may use sacred Sanskrit terms, but is it appropriate for yogis and yoginis to use vulgar language? My guest this week on Vox Novus, Dr. Tracey L. Ulshafer, says that there are some words that yogis should refrain from using and sometimes not. Reverend Dr. Tracey is the founder of One Yoga and Wellness Center, which operated as a physical studio in New Jersey until 2022. Dr. Tracey continues to escort international yoga and healing retreats. Her self-published award-winning fictional book, The Accidental Yogini, continues to be praised as an easy read with digestible yoga philosophies spread throughout. The book was rebranded as a series in 2024 as The Accidental Yogini Kristin, and a new book, The Accidental Yogini Padma, was also released, with more books to come. Her website is oneyogacenter.net, and she joins me this week to share her path and just published book, SH!T, Yogis Shouldn't Say. Please join me in welcoming to Vox Novus Dr. Tracey Ulshafer. Welcome, Dr. Tracey.
Hi, Victor. How are you today?
I am wonderful, thank you. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well myself. It's a great day. Sun is out.
Absolutely. Tracey, we have a new audience meeting you today, so let's share how we met and how yoga changed our lives and paths. It was my pleasure to meet you when we were both pursuing our Doctor of Ministry degrees with a new seminary back in 2020, and we were both associate ministers with the Interfaith Temple. Please share with our listeners your early path and how it evolved before yoga, massage, and healing became your calling.
Sure. I guess the biggest shift for me, I had a car accident as a teenager. I had a compression fracture in my spine, which created this weak link. And as I worked a sedentary desk job, things got worse. I didn't particularly have any faith growing up. My parents both said, you can figure out what you believe in. So I didn't have spiritual practices at that time. I was kind of lost. And a friend of mine said, you might benefit from yoga. Let's check it out. So flash forward a month or so into this yoga practice, and suddenly I'm feeling stronger and not taking Advil, and my back is feeling better. So I realized there was something to this, and soon I noticed that the physical improvements weren't the only thing. I was having a better mindset. I was starting to make decisions about my life that put me in a better place, better relationships, a job that more suited me. And then finally, I made the decision to leave that all behind, corporate America, all of that stuff, and to do my own healing practices. So I had a yoga teacher training that I completed, and that was after a massage therapy program. So 2 years of training and study, and then I just said, that's it. I'm in both feet full time, and I didn't look back. So since then, and that was sometime around 1999 or 2000 when I finally finished graduating from all of that, I have been in this holistic spectrum since then.
You know, it's interesting because my yoga path started also with a back injury. I had actually sustained a back injury in my 20s, and I carried it into my 40s. And a friend of mine said, have you ever tried yoga? And I said, no. And they said, try yoga. It's going to help your back. And I had an adult education newspaper from the local high school, and there was an ad that said "Take yoga with Judy Hamsa," and there was something about the name Hamsa. I didn't understand. I didn't know the name, but something about it resonated with me. And I started taking yoga classes, and Judy Hamsa, who was Judy, became my teacher and also a dear friend. And
Mhm.
during the course of this, she asked me, she said, "I love your voice. Would you start facilitating the meditation?" And I did. And then we started taking a series of trips to a Zen monastery up in Livingston Manor, New York. And at one of these trips, somebody mentioned the word Reiki. And it was something that, again, resonated with me. I didn't know what it meant, but there was something about the word that resonated with me. And there were three of us who said early next year, and within 2 weeks, we were actually in our first Reiki class together. And Reiki and yoga were the rocket fuels that sort of reopened my path from a spiritual sense, and I'm grateful for both of
Mhm.
them.
Yes.
You are a prolific author, prolific. Before we discuss your just published new book, SH exclamation point T, that yogis shouldn't say, tell us what inspired you to write your best-selling series, The Accidental Yogini.
I always loved writing. Even as a kid, I had, kids would be out playing in the playground, and I would be squirreled away somewhere writing plays and short stories. So that was always an important part of my life. And when I was 22 years of owning a yoga studio and watching the transformation that takes place with people, the transformation that took place in my own life. Um, I wanted to combine my two passions of writing and sharing what yoga can do for people, how it can transform their life. So I got the idea to write a book called The Accidental Yogini, where this young girl, her life's a mess, and just like our stories, Victor, somebody in her life says, "Why don't we try yoga?" And she reluctantly goes into it. She doesn't think it's going to help, and lo and behold, it changes her entire life. And um, so I wrote that. I think that might have been published in 2018. And then a couple years ago, I closed my yoga studio, and I was in Florida with my mother and wondering what I should do. Didn't really have a lot of work at that time. So I started writing a second book and and decided to rebrand the whole series and call it the Accidental Yogini book series and then give it a name. So the first book got rebranded as the Accidental Yogini Kristin, and then the Accidental Yogini Padma came out last year. And I've gotten good reviews from them, and I've won some awards for the first book and some Reader's Choice 5 stars. And now I'm working on my third book. So I'm just trying to sprinkle yogic wisdom in a digestible way for people, um, and and have them see that there's many different ways that this practice can help you. So, even people that are probably what you might feel are the furthest away from being a yogi or a yogini, um, it can help if you just let it in, and it has some very profound healing because it incorporates all the facets of the human person, body, mind, spirit, everything. And it's just a complete self-development practice that's thousands of years old. But I want to bring it to people that may have preconceived ideas about it and may think that it's only for people that are bendy and flexible, or just for, I hear a lot, people think, well, it's just for rich white women. Yoga's for everyone and everybody. And so that's what I try to portray in my books, different heroines from different walks of life.
And as you mentioned, your latest iterations are Padma and the newer release of Kristin. Let's start with Padma, her path, and how yoga changed her life.
Padma is the story of a newly married young mother and has a lot of stress and anxiety about being the perfect mom and wife. I think a lot of women do that to themselves. We, have these aspirations that we have to um, do the be this perfect person, and so for Padma, and she is an Indian American woman who's a family member practiced yoga, but it was never brought into her own life. So through a series of a few things, I don't want to give too much away about the book. She does find her way to the yoga practice and actually back to the motherland of India. And what happens for her is this calling, her true life purpose, her dharma finds her, or she finds it, and then at the end of the book, you see this very different person emerge.
And share with our listeners the meaning of the word, the name Padma.
Padma is Sanskrit for lotus.
Mm.
So the lotus symbol in Hinduism and Buddhism is a deep. We could talk about that probably for an hour. Um, but part of her journey that her teacher says is, I think you're going to find the truth and the true meaning of your name. So she does understand that to a deeper extent through her travels through India. What is the lotus flower and what does it represent?
How does Kristin's journey differ from Padma's?
Kristin was the first book. So in that one, there's a little bit more of my own story in it. It's not about me, and there's a lot of creative liberty. There's a lot of my students in it, but it is a woman who works in corporate America who has an issue with her hip or her back. She's not even sure. So she's in pain all the time and she doesn't like her job. And um, a family member recommends yoga. She starts yoga, and the next thing you know, similar to my story, she's out of pain and starts to realize that the job maybe isn't the thing for her. The relationships that she doesn't have a solid, true relationship. So she starts to seek out these aspects of her life that are more true to her, and she winds up at the end being actually a yoga teacher, and it changes her life. So um, the different heroines, but same common thread.
Both Padma and Kristin reflect discovery and healing journeys for women. This message is so important, especially after the challenges of the current political climate have created for women. What message would you offer concerning this?
My only advice is always to be true. And I think if you are able to find a way to be true, you will be a guide, a light for others. Your truth won't resonate with everyone. It's not meant to, but you will find and you will help the people that are meant to find and help you. I would say as long as you're following your truth, it's all coming. So just stay with that. Focus on that.
And for both of us, we talk about second chapters. These books also look at second chapters, significant life changes that both women and men experience as they reach their late 30s and early 40s. How would you suggest they approach and embrace those changes?
Well, I think that people that are on the path are fairly open. So, you know, understanding that um, our experiences brought us here to these moments. They set us up for where we are and what we're living in and what we're experiencing. So be open and also remind yourself at all times that even though you may have lived a lot and been through a lot, you don't know everything. There's always more to understand or learn. So, forget what you think you know. And I go back to that, follow your truth, but also be open for the universe and how it's going to divinely guide you. If you're too busy, you'll miss a lot of those signals. And I find that a lot of people today are too busy. So they get to this point in their life where they want to make a change, but they're just so caught up in their life, and they believe that there's nothing that they can do to change it because just it is what it is. I hear that a lot. Um, but when we're open, and sometimes it just takes us to do one thing a little different to shift the energy, and then suddenly something opens up, and um, we can experience a deeper truth, and then understand, wow, there's something more deeper I'm meant to be doing here. And I think that that's a lot of people's agitation. They don't realize that there's something else under the surface, because they're just too busy kind of getting through life. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And for both of us, this reflects the blessing of synchronicities in our lives. Synchronicities, Carl Jung referred to them as coincidences without causal connection.
Mm.
Sacred coincidences without causal connection. And
Mhm.
for both of us, it was the synchronicities and the willingness to look at them and embrace them and say, yes, that works for me, and move
Mhm.
forward.
Right, right.
Tell us about your founding of One Yoga Center, how the school ensued, and why you chose to close it in 2022.
Um, well, when I was leaving that corporate job, and I had started doing some massage therapy, some Reiki, I had started teaching a few yoga classes. At that time, which was around the turn of the century. I love saying that. It makes me feel so ancient. Um, around the turn of the century. But when that time frame, yoga was really starting to boom in the area. So there weren't many studios around. I was teaching a few classes and suddenly found this need to really open something bigger. So I opened a yoga studio, and then I was really just busting at the seams. In a couple of years, I had to open a bigger wellness center. It wound up being a huge wellness center, 4,000 plus square feet, with many rooms that I rented to different holistic practitioners, and had yoga trainings, sometimes three at a time, multiple classes. It was a really, really big place and busy place. And yoga exploded at some point in the 2000, let's say 15 area, where there was a yoga studio on every corner. And then what happened was, a lot of my students started going to other places that might be closer to their home. And one day, this is a story for another time, but I came back from Peru after having a very deep spiritual experience, and realized that this big wellness center wasn't right anymore. And so I downsized, I moved the location, and I focused just on my offerings instead of having a lot of other people that I spent most of my time promoting. And they were lovely people. Um, but I really just needed to make it more concise about my offerings and what I could do for people. So I did that, and then COVID happened, and we all know how that changed the world. So I actually, for a while, I was still doing hybrid yoga classes, but I started selling crystals, and I had a huge crystal sale business. I loved it. I still do. Um, but one day, I looked at my husband. I actually was sick. He had gotten COVID. He brought it home and gave it to me. He was so kind that way. of sharing. We were sitting on the couch. I couldn't get anybody to cover my class. I couldn't get anybody to even water the plants. And I looked at him and I just said, I'm tired. I don't think I can do this anymore. I think I'm done. So he said, okay. And a couple months later, I closed. And the idea was, I think what happened with that time frame is a lot of people who weren't living their true lives, or they weren't living in their true homes, or doing what they're really impassioned about, or maybe the time for what we were doing was over and we needed a push to do something a little bit different. And I think that's what happened to me. The brick and mortar of owning a physical location was over, and I needed to expand myself to offer things to a more global community. So it gave me the opportunity to kind of segue into that.
And what are your offerings today? What do you offer?
I do healing retreats around the world. I go to planetary power places, earth chakra places. We lean into the land. We do healing work for ourselves and the planet. I also offer different workshops on yoga or Thai yoga body work, and I write. And so I'm working on more lecture workshop series that incorporate my books and offering them at different places.
My guest is Dr. Tracey Ulshafer. Her new book that we're going to be talking about is SH exclamation point T, Yogis Shouldn't Say. Tracey, please share with our listeners where they can find out more about you and get all of your wonderful books.
My website is oneyogacenter.net, O-N-E, spelled out, yogacenter.net.
And what about the books?
They're on Amazon. You can also purchase them through me at my website.
And we'll be back with more of Tracey after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Back on Vox Novus, my guest this week, my dear friend, Reverend Dr. Tracey Ulshafer. We're going to be talking about her new book, SH exclamation point T, Yogis Shouldn't Say. Okay, it's time for me to watch my language. What inspired your brand new book?
Oh, Victor, I was, as I mentioned earlier, in Florida with my mom. I had closed my yoga studio. I had a lot of feelings. I had a lot of pent up agitation about a lot of things. I needed an outlet. I needed a way to express a lot of things. So I just started writing this book. And that was in 2022. So I put it away for a while. As you know, life does. It marches on. You get busy, you start doing other things. And I revisited it in January. And when I reread it, I said, wow, I actually have most of the book done. It just needs some editing and some build out. And so I sat down and I did that and I finished it. And I just thought it was a good time for it.
Absolutely. Now, you're a Jersey girl or Jersey girl,
Noisy.
and I'm a Brooklyn boy, so these words are not uncommon to us, especially growing up. Tell us who you dedicated this book to and why you think they would love it.
Well, I hope they would love it. Let's say that. My both of my grandmothers have passed. They were both very influential women in my life. They were both very strong, but in different ways. My one grandmother, Rachel, she was my Jewish grandmother. She was born with polio, and she was told she could never do lots of things in her life. And her sole mission was to prove everybody wrong and do all of the things that she was told she could never do. So one of her greatest loves were the Philadelphia Phillies. And when they were on, all she used to do was curse at them, curse at the refs, curse at them. It was comical to see this older woman with that kind of language. My dad used to call it, she sounded like a truck driver. That's what he used to
Yes.
say. So, it was normal language in my house. My other grandmother, she didn't really so much curse. She was quieter in her demeanor. She was quieter in her strength. But when she got into her 90s, especially later 90s, she started to cut loose, and it was hilarious to hear her curse. She was Italian, so sometimes these Italian words would slip out, and it was just funny. And I think she was very humorous. She did it for effect. She did it. She said these things for effect and to get a rise out of people. Um, so I dedicated the book to both my grandmothers, and in hopes that they would both appreciate the humor and be proud of the work.
I think they both love what you've done. I really do. I have that sense about that. Absolutely. So, as you had mentioned before, you massaged your way out of corporate job with benefits, studied massage and yoga instruction. You shared that you're a big fan of the Buddha and his middle path. And you say, so try a little meditation, use a little cursing, do a little pranayama, watch a bit of a stupid movie. Do you think Siddhartha would have agreed with you on cursing and the movie?
Victor, I love this question and thank you for it. Um, this book, you have to read understanding heavy sarcasm. And for people that don't get that, it's maybe not their book. Um, the Buddha's middle path, it's really not about extremes, right? It's about balance, finding balance in the middle. And it's about um, not denying the extremes, but integrating them into a balanced, harmonious life or living. And it's like the yin yang symbol, right? There's light in the dark and there's dark in the light. So we can't deny those shadows. We shouldn't live in the extremes either. So when I say do a little this, do a little that, there's this sarcastic edge to that. I want people though to think about these things when they read the book. I want it to elicit certain emotions. I want them to dig deep into what they believe and what they think. And I do think that Siddhartha would appreciate that.
Absolutely. Well, the famous story of his enlightenment was he was under that tree and he opened his eyes And
Mhm.
they asked him who he was, and he said, I am awake. And I think what we're talking about is awakening to the
Mhm.
fact that we need to embrace everything that resonates with us in life.
Right. Exactly. That's the journey, right? That's our, that's why we're here, I think.
It's funny when you had mentioned do a little pranayama, use a little cursing. I was thinking of that song, Casey and the Sunshine Band, do a little dance, make a little love, get down tonight, get down
Right.
tonight.
Right. Right.
You say even jackasses can be yogis. I assume you've met a few. I mean, yogis, not jackasses.
I have. I've met a few of both.
Tell us
And
about it.
know a few of both. Yeah. No, I have experienced I'll tell you one profound person that I met, and I won't say his name, but there was a traveling yogi that came to Princeton University early on in my career. I think I was still studying in school for yoga training. I don't believe I was even teaching yet, or maybe I just started teaching, but it was one of those synchronistic events where I lived outside of Princeton, and I came home one day and there was a flyer stuck in my door for this yogi that was going to be at Princeton University through the I think it was the Hindu or Hinduism Society was bringing him in. And I said, well, I don't know who put it there or how this got there, but I'm going. That's a sign, right? So I went, and I knew Princeton University a little bit, but not great. I knew the building, but I didn't know where in the building. I found myself upstairs, and this Indian man was just kind of walking in the hall, and me, my Jersey self, I just walked up and said, "Hey, do you know where this guy is?" And he says, "Oh, it's going to be downstairs." And I said, "Okay, thank you." And I went downstairs and we're waiting. And then the guy that I saw in the hallway is the guy. He winds up being this holy man, this traveling yogi. And one thing that I realized quickly, and I've noticed this with the Dalai Lama, who I was privileged to see when he was at Rutgers University many years ago, 20 some years ago, when he came here. They do the same thing when they are asked a question that comes to them. In this case, Princeton University, very academic, very smart people, but sometimes a little too much in our heads, right? So, um, when asked a particular question, the first thing this man did, and I've seen the Dalai Lama do, is giggle. So this heavy, deep, philosophical, academic, loaded question comes, and the first thing they do is pause and laugh. One of the things that I've learned is not to take myself so seriously.
Mm.
I learned that day, and I continue to learn that, and I hope that I bring some of that in the book.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting. I think all of us have had some form of a teacher in our lives who've helped us to achieve that same realization, not to take ourselves too seriously. I worked for a man many years ago, and he had a brilliant businessman, but he had a couple of expressions that he used all the time. One of them was, I may not always be right, but I'm never wrong. And the realization was, I'm working for you. I have to respect what you have to say, whether I agree with it or not. And that was a very important realization for you to have as a young man. The other realization, the other thing he used to say, when someone did something that he didn't like, he would say, what do you have? SH exclamation point T for brains. And the concept, what he was basically saying, he says, think. He was teaching us to think before we reacted or moved forward in a certain way. And I'm grateful for all of those teachers, even at the time that they may have seemed a little bit harsh. I'm grateful for those
Yes.
teachers.
Yeah, for sure.
You offer a whole chapter on the F word, and I don't mean faith. Does that reflect your New Jersey upbringing?
Hmm. Well, I think it might be a little Jersey and a lot of Gen X. I remember in high school, I had a very good friend, and I don't know if it was, I think senior year when you have to write these papers and whatever, and his was on the just that, the F word, and how for our generation, um, it has a whole different meaning and context than previous generations. So it's a common word, and it's very um, eclectic, and it has a lot of deep meaning, and it has a lot of fun, superficial meaning, depending on how you use it. So I think it's a heavier dose of Gen X, but there's definitely a lot of Jersey in it.
And tell us a little bit more about why you dedicate so much time to the F word.
Well, I think that there's a there's lots of layers that I go into in the book with respect to it. I didn't realize when I started writing it how much yoga philosophy I was going to dig into, I guess. And I wound up sort of doing that. So the chapter titles, the first chapter's title is the F word, right? That's it.
Hmm.
That's the
Yes.
chapter title. And then there's other ones, and they're meant to grab your attention. They're meant to maybe even startle you a little bit, or push some buttons. And what I wind up doing in the chapter is really sinking into yogic concepts and philosophies that relate to it, and explore in a deeper, more profound way, I hope, but also with a lot of humor and levity. Um, is this how can we put this in any kind of yogic term, or would a yogi even use this term? So without giving too much away about the book, um, I felt like that was the most impactful way to start it.
Is there power in the F word?
Absolutely. Have you ever used it?
Of course. Me, with my virgin lips, never. And that never came out of my mouth. No, no, absolutely. What are some of the powers that are in that word?
Um, I took semantics in college, right? This class about semantics, which the reason I took it was I was really interested in the energy behind words uh, in the context of that. The course didn't meet up to my expectations. That's another story, but um, I find that all words, just like anything, have energy to them, right? So um, when we're using these specific words, when we're trying to express something in a certain way, um, finding just the right word that has the right nuance, it brings a whole new life. So I think that particularly that one word has the ability, the power to do that, but in lots of different ways. So it can be very deep, and it can elicit anger or um, other emotions in that realm, but it also can elicit laughter and joy. It's a very versatile little effort.
Tell us the meaning of the Sanskrit word ahimsa.
Ahimsa generally means nonviolence.
Okay. And does it also mean forgiveness?
Yes.
Okay. So may we find ahimsa within effery?
um Yes, why not? Everything is relative, right? And it's all about right intention.
Absolutely. I love the expression. I hadn't seen this word, the ERY added on to the end of the F word until about 5 years ago. And I think it's a great word.
Mm-hmm.
It
A
means,
fun word, right?
I'm sorry?
It's a fun word.
It's a fun word. It's a wonderful word. It's a word that implies that what's transpiring, what's taking place, is silly, really.
Right. Right. Yeah.
The silliness of the effery. I love that word. My guest, Reverend Dr. Tracey Ulshafer, and by the way, I'm also a Reverend Doctor, and we're using the F word, so that's okay. I just want to let people know it's okay. Her brand new book, SH exclamation point T, Yogis Shouldn't Say. We'll be back with more of Tracey after these words on the Home Times Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Om Times Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Hey, Dad, your prescription will be ready in just a minute. Hey, Dad, your laundry will be ready in just a minute. Dad, your lunch will be ready in just a minute.
Hey, honey, why don't you take a minute? When you help care for a loved one, you give them as much time as you can. But it's just as important to take time for yourself. AARP can help. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving. That's aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Back on Vox Novus, my guest this week, my dear friend, Reverend Dr. Tracey Ulshafer. We're talking about her brand new book, SH exclamation point T, Yogis Shouldn't Say. Tracey, have you ever, in a time of upset, told someone to kiss your asana?
No, but I want that on a shirt.
Is there a place for hatred in yoga?
That's another really good question. And one of the reasons that I use some of these words and went there with some of these chapters is I want people to ask those questions, and I want them to really lean into them and think about them, because I think that there are a lot of these feelings about spiritual paths and teachers that in many ways we're not human, or we're held to certain high standards, either imposed by ourselves or by our community and others, that we're should be perfect, or we should be this, or we should be that. And certainly we aspire to be good people, that are helpful people, that are kind people. But to deny certain aspects of the self is to deny our complete humanity. So hate is a part, it's an emotion, it's a feeling, just like anger is. We like to refer them as shadow energy or shadow stuff. Again, I think that's in some ways to downplay that they're valid, but they are. We've all experienced these things. So we don't, there's this whole, again, philosophy about attachment and avoidance in yoga. They're both equally not fantastic. So we can't avoid as much as we can't be attached. So we have to embrace those qualities, but I think with a certain amount of emotional intelligence as well. So yes, I believe there's space for that in yoga. There should be space for that in yoga. And we should be questioning those things. And then where do they come from? And what is the underlying energy that's bringing them up? This is how healing occurs, not by avoiding that it exists.
Absolutely. I remember early on when I first started taking yoga classes, if I were to pull a muscle in something other than a yoga class, I would use the S word as a response to that.
Yeah.
And I had pulled a muscle during a yoga class, and I used all of my power to refrain from using the S word after that happened. And I came to the realization, that I had a discussion with my dear friend, my yoga teacher at the time. And I came to the realization that, you know what, we're human beings. And if this is part of our normal humanity, it should be part of the yoga practice too.
Right. Yeah. And I think I talk about a lot of this in the book, and some of it I just kind of drop in and let you ponder it. But these are important qualities and aspects of the journey. So I appreciate your questions and bringing this up, so we have an opportunity to talk about it. Because I want people to understand the full context of where I'm coming from with the book.
Is there vanity in yoga?
Yeah. Yeah, I was in a class once. I remember this teacher. I incorporated it. I adopted it from her. We were in a class, and for anybody who practices yoga knows Tadasana, which is mountain pose. And normally, in many situations, you're coming up from the floor to a standing position. And when you get there, what is the first thing that you do? You fix your clothes. You adjust your shirt. You tuck things in. You make sure you look good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what she said. She called it fix your clothes pose.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that. And it's like, it's true. Is anybody looking at us? No, we're doing it for ourselves. We want to make sure we look good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Pranayama is the act of different breathing exercises. Is it possible to curse through pranayama?
Yeah, I think you could. Well, right. Just like there's mantras that are internal, right? So you could curse internally during pranayama. I could do it. Yeah.
Is there a purpose for cursing during pranayama?
I think I tell a story in the book. I don't want to retell it now, but there was a situation that I was in. It was an excruciating, painful experience. And I wanted to give up the whole time. And there was only so much positive encouragement that worked. And at some point, I resorted to cursing and telling myself, you're never going to get through this. You can't do it. And then I would make myself so mad, I would do more. So it kind of fueled me to go further. So it worked in that capacity. So I've found that there are these extreme times where all of the love and light doesn't help me. And I have to dig into a whole other side of myself to get through. And that's where that comes in.
I think that's a recognition again of our humanity, that we're not perfect, and sometimes we have to make a change and adjustment in order to fulfill that which we aspire to. Mm-hmm. And if the process involves self-cursing, then and then you take the action after the self-cursing, then it served its purpose. Absolutely served its purpose.
Right.
Are there curse words in Sanskrit?
Oh, it's interesting. I'm not a Sanskrit scholar. But I did a little research because I wanted to understand this a little bit better myself. There's no direct curse words in Sanskrit in a modern sense, apparently. But this is a classical language. it was mostly used in the Vedas, the Upanishads, so these spiritual and religious texts. However, there are ways that you can reflect or express certain things in Sanskrit, like the word mudha means fool or idiot. So it's not calling someone a jackass, but that's as close as you'd get in Sanskrit to something like that. And even the word cursing, it's meant different in this context in Sanskrit and in these specific texts. There were sages who actually cursed, but when they cursed someone, it was more something like, may you be struck with misfortune. That was their cursing of the person. So I find, again, I love when I find these things because it reminds me it's not all about that, that light aspect. There is another aspect that we have to integrate. And so, yeah, it's there. It's all there. It's just not in as much of a forward way, I guess, that we use it today.
That makes the gentleman that I had mentioned earlier that I had worked for many years ago, who used to use these expressions to bring us to the realization that we were making mistakes or not perfect, a true yogi.
Right. He was. Absolutely. Absolutely.
What would you suggest for someone who gets SH exclamation point T in their third eye from a passing pigeon?
That's supposed to be good luck, isn't it, Victor?
Is that good luck? I didn't know that.
I think when you get dropped on by a bird and it's on your either the crown of, I think the crown or the forehead, it's supposed to be good luck. I don't know about the eye.
This is the third eye, so that would be the forehead, right?
Right.
In all seriousness, you share a tremendous amount of information on yogic practice and spirituality in this book. What would you like readers to take away from it?
Again, question what you know or why you believe in the things that you do. Don't take yourself so seriously. One of my yoga teachers used to say, it was kind of corny, but he used to say, angels fly because they take themselves lightly. And you have to get back there. Everybody today takes everything and themselves and everyone else so seriously. And I'm not saying things aren't serious, but there has to be some levity and laughter and taking yourself lightly. Let's not forget the importance and the significance of that. If an Indian or a Tibetan holy man does it, and you can watch the joy and the glimmer in their eye when they giggle at something that's so serious, you can see where that wisdom comes from. Come on, let's take a minute to appreciate that joy is a part of life, and we're meant to be joyful.
And I think we need to laugh and curse every day as an exercise.
Let's do it. Let's see what happens.
My guest, my dear friend, Reverend Dr. Tracey Ulshafer, her brand new book, SH exclamation point T, Yogis Shouldn't Say. Tracey, again, please share with our listeners where they can get your books and find out more about you and your amazing work.
Absolutely. So the new book, SH exclamation point T, Yogi Shouldn't Say, that is launching on Amazon on this Saturday, March 29th. All of my other books are on Amazon as well, all the Yogini books and a few other books that I wrote previous to that. So you can buy everything on Amazon. They're print on demand. I also have copies here that I can sell to people on my website, which is oneyogacenter.net. And I'm happy to autograph them. And I'm also looking for opportunities to collaborate with other people for workshops and book signings. So if this speaks to you, if this work or my thoughts, if it speaks to you, please do reach out. I'm looking to collaborate with a lot of more people this year.
And Tracey, what are you offering in terms of personal services?
If you are in New Jersey or the surrounding area, I'm a licensed massage therapist, so I do massage therapy. I also have a program of Thai yoga bodywork. I teach, that's national board certified for continuing education units, but I also offer that to people. I also do what I call quantum healing sessions. So it's a blend of lots of different things, shamanic practices, Reiki, all kinds of things that I've amassed along my journey. And so those are private offerings and private yoga that I offer. And then the retreats, I have a huge trip to Egypt and through Egypt that I am now booking for October of 2026 for people who want to explore the power behind that land.
Beautiful. Reverend Dr. Tracey, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom, which is filled with humor as well as practical application. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Victor. Always a pleasure.
And thank you for joining us on Vox Novus. I'm Victor, the Voice Furman. Have a wonderful week.